Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. We are continuing our Venus window launch. This is a Lima resupply pod, which carries liquid oxygen, liquid fuel. Oh boy, liquid oxygen and kerosene, designed to refuel the Chestnut, the crewed vehicle, on station so that it can make a return to Earth. I think I let our relative inclination go a little. Is it going up? Nope, it's going down. Okay, cool. So we're just going to give this a couple seconds to get our relative inclination with the moon down. As you can see, we are taking off on a liftoff, the Hoffel rocket. Man, I guess I should actually get an official name for this thing, but yeah. By the Delta V numbers, we should have enough to get to Venus. I'm hoping anyway. This is actually the first flight for this resupply pod, and kind of an inaugural run, but since the crew's not going out this window, it might be kind of a test run. We'll just see if it works. So, SAS is on, throttle is set to full, relative inclination is good, ignition. Yeah, let's hit the spacebar, not the Z key. Way to go, Crash. Way to go. Engines are spooled, we are lit, clamps off. 1.2 off the pad, so we're actually moving. Of course, yellow clocked as always. So we're gonna go ahead and try to make a nice, easy ascent to orbit, and pray to all that is high and holy that we don't experience any stupid failures or related issues this flight. That's that's booster sep, that's fairing sep. So our staging should all be in order. I think everything should just work. That's what we're hoping for anyway. So I'm gonna let this get up to speed, start our gravity turn, and I will see all of you in orbit. Well, we'll start to angle in here in just a little bit with our liftoff, the Hassel rocket, and start to pivot this thing towards orbit. Now, I hope you don't mind that we're going to engage in a little bit of launch-ception today, in that we did have two of these flights go out this window, a primary and a backup, and now we've got a nice little picture of both flights taking place all at the same time. In retrospect, there was a much better way I could have done this. It didn't occur to me until after the editing was done, and I was about to get this episode out as he sits here recording voiceover. Anyway, both flights were absolutely nominal, which is why neither of them gets their own episode. It's because they were remarkably unremarkable, which is, I guess, the best you can hope for in the very heavy things to distant planets kind of business that we're currently finding ourselves in. I was a little late on the second flight getting into the gravity turns. You saw that very sudden pitch over, but nothing new for me. Booster sep on both vehicles, relatively well timed through both things, although a little later getting the fairings off. But that's because it had a more aggressive gravity turn profile and was lower in the atmosphere when it came time to separate the fairings. But we did get both pods booted up and starting independent comms. That's what I was looking for. Although on our second launch here, I did notice a rather obscure wiggle with the heat shield. Once we got up into some of the higher thrust to weight ratios, and once we'll separate from the Hoffel stage much later on, but hopefully you can see kind of that wiggle here in all of this speddy uppy bit footage, but both of those cleaned up pretty well. We got our stage sep, and so we'll bring up our primary mission here, and I'll turn you back over to old me. That lag spike there kind of terrified me. But we're going to get angled here down the horizon, 2 minutes 40 seconds to our apogee, and got about a kilometer per second and some coin to make up, so maybe a degree or two above board. Make sure I can click on these engines. Yes, I can. Ignition's remaining 4. Perfect. Let's kick out our solar panels and start generating some charge. We'll also kick on these radiators, because, man, I can't see them at all. Thanks, engine glare. Extend, activate. Things I definitely should have action grouped, but did not. I already got you, right? Yes. Okay, good. Excellent. We are in working order. And that time to apogee is not falling very fast, so we'll just adjust our angle down, only 0.26 deviation on our relative inclination with the moon. That is pretty dang good. I just really hope moon doesn't get in the way of our transfer to Venus. That would upset me greatly. I also hope that we have enough after our burn here to make it. I'm sure we will. We need like, what, 30, almost 4 kilometers per second? Oh, wow. Alright, so we're probably going to make up a little bit here on the back end, but that's fine. We got this big-ass heat shield for aero capture around Venus. As long as we don't go too low, we should be fine. As long as we don't go too high and eject ourselves out of the system again, it'll be fine. Yeah, no, it's not easy to do, but we've done it a few times, and I think I have a nice plot based on mass to try to figure that out, but I don't know, I guess we'll see. That's why we're launching 2 of them this window, and neither one of them has to be there. As long as we get the life support on station, the crew can wait until next window for a return trip refueler, so that's a thing. So we'll just speed through the rest of this 2-orbit burn. As mentioned, the life support pods will also be going out this window, a pair of them. Absolutely, because, you know, why not have a backup, or why not just make sure that your 6 Kerbal crew can stay on station for, 10 or 12 years, because, hey, why not? Anyway, we'll start to pitch this one down. This is a maneuver we didn't have to do on our other launch, but, we that one had other issues. We'll get to that shortly. Anyway, our plot for Venus says that we shouldn't be leaving anytime soon, which of course was kind of distressing. I went to plot the node manually, and Mech Jeb just readjusted itself, and let me go ahead and plot the node for next orbit in 1 hour. That does kind of take us in on a nice path, and at a very desirable inclination. This is turning out to be a very favorable window for getting things to Ostrich Station in Venus orbit after all, which is really quite good for us. So we'll go ahead and we'll take our lap and get ourselves kind of right up on the Terminator day-night side here at Earth, and then start to get ourselves pivoted in. We are just shy of the necessary delta V, so we will have to kind of clean this up on our ELE, our experimental engine there at the bottom of the fuel pod, but with any good fortune, we'll have more than enough to make the correction, aero capture at Venus, aero brake ourselves into a low orbit, and then we really should only need a couple hundred delta V left in that engine to perform rendezvous and docking. That's the plan anyway, based on my experiences at Mars, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, a very long ullage tug from those thrusters, a little too soon, but I'd like to burn off that thruster fuel, and a little bit of a mislight. We only had 1 out of 4 engines light, causing a little bit of a shift. Not too bad. We do have 5 ignitions total on these HG3 engines, so we are now down, what was it, 1 to hit orbit, 2 on the misfire, so 3, 2 left, something like that. Yeah, math. It's entirely too late at night for any of that nonsense. So with all 4 engines on a good light and a full thrust from the thrusters also, we'll just go ahead and burn through the last bit of that fuel. I did transfer some of it up into our empty ballast tank in between the heat shield and the resupply pod itself. That tank's primary purpose is to make sure that we can shift the mass closer to the heat shield during our aero capture maneuver, but it is also nice to take a little extra fuel with us. Reasons. I mean, it accounts for all of like a second of runtime on the ELE, but balanced for the thrusters, and we'll give them a not insignificant little oomph, I guess. Yeah, it'll help in there somewhere. I'm absolutely certain it will. But this is a rather long ejection burn. There's the completion of our Hoffel stage, which will barely escape Earth orbit, but it will get there, and a little bit of pulse from the thrusters as we just kind of double check our telemetry. I was a little confused looking at it, but we are on escape, and we are almost to Venus. So we'll go back to a little bit of ejection burnception. The secondary pod had a little bit of an issue. Most of the way through its correction burn on its way out of our Earth SOI, the ELE engine experienced loss of thrust, or a partial engine failure, meaning that it was not going to complete its burn on time. I did have to go back and kind of replot the node, but as the engine was still firing and we were almost to Venus anyway, I decided that we're not going to quite give up on this thing. Who knows, it may end up becoming a mission critical piece of hardware after all. I did not get the periapsis at Venus very low, figuring we can probably correct for that when we're a little closer. It's a little less tenuous, although it will be just a little bit more expensive. But with that experimental engine only producing about 240 some odd kilonewtons of thrust, it was a little bit of slow going, although it is just as efficient as it was. Thank goodness we didn't lose ISP on it also. So at least we had that going for us. But we were able to eventually get our secondary pod on a relatively decent intercept course. It did take a lot of touching up on thruster power only after shutting the engine down. Hopefully that'll be the last time that engine has to burn before it makes rendezvous with Ostrich Station. But after many minutes of just holding the H keys, various other keys, we were able to actually get a very good alignment here with Ostrich Station on a pretty respectable intercept path, and get our periapsis well within threshold for performing our Aero capture maneuver. So it'll actually be a very small correction here. Both of these will arrive in about 120 some odd days. I think it's like 120 and 125 respectively. So this stuff will actually be on station very, very soon. So that's all you need to know about Pod 2. Back to Pod 1. It was actually also making its correction, sweeping up here kind of underneath Venus. It was less than ideal for most of this, really. But it was just a lot of holding IJ, K, L, H, and N keys. I actually had to look down at my keyboard because that's how that's how tired I am this week. So many various corrections, we were able to actually get our relative inclination with Ostrich Station down to just a few degrees, which is absolutely awesome, provided we don't absolutely screw up the Aero capture maneuver, and we can still maintain it at a very eccentric orbit, making that, scrubbing that degree or two, or up to 3 degrees maybe, of inclination between the two will be pretty easy pickings, and then we'll just lower our periapsis again and pass gently through the very, very, very upper parts of Venus's atmosphere to very slowly slow ourselves down into a, I don't know, a much better aligned orbit with Ostrich Station. But we're coming up on finishing that up, so I will turn you very briefly over to old me. And there it is. We're taking a quick save. This is en route to Venus. We have a really low relative inclination with the station on arrival, which is awesome. And we'll just, actually, I need to jump back out here just for a second. Sorry, everyone. But we're going to add a maneuver. That is our placeholder to make sure that we can adjust our periapsis accordingly. We will add an alarm. Come on. Add an alarm. Add an alarm. Oh, don't crash on me now. Add a new alarm. Okay, thank goodness. 125 days. Yeah, actually, we don't need a whole lot of lead time on that, so add alarm. There it is. Hooah! Finally, something goes right for this series of missions. Let's make sure our batteries are charging. Yes, fully charged. Staying that way, and I think we only have 2.5 panels in the sun. Good. So when we get to Venus, we'll be in even better shape. So now we officially have 2 out of our 4 Venus launches on the way to Venus, and so we will skip back to the launch pad for a DN6B. This is, of course, carrying one of our life support pods. This would be a Charlie resupply pod. This is the exact same design that we have used at Harmonia Station for years, and as I noted previously, we have 2 of these going out, so we'll do something a little bit different for our launch-ception. The Venus Life Support pod Charlie 4 and Charlie 5, both launching out of Cape Canaveral Air Station really within a few hours of each other, thanks to our multiple launch pads. That's why the weather system looks so remarkably familiar. I did do 4 there at the bottom first, so, and then 5 just a few hours later. It was probably a day, at least a day, because I had to wait for relative inclination with the moon to come down to a reasonable level so that I could do this. And how watching this makes me realize exactly how patterned I am with both my camera angles and my flight profiles. The launches are really only a couple of seconds off from each other, so you can kind of see. Oh man, time to start making some new habits here, Crash. Yeah. Anyway, we need one of these pods to arrive safely at Ostrich Station before we can clear the crew for arrival. There's Booster Sep and Fairy Sep on both vehicles as they make their way to orbit on the back of the core stage. We'll boot up our comms, and I just set these clips to both start at the launch sequence. I did not synchronize anything, but it's a little eerie to watch. Sorry. We need one of these pods to show up safely at Ostrich Station. That will give a 6 Kerbal crew about 4 years of life support supplies on station. Maybe a little bit less, give or take, but I'm going to say it's going to be at least 4 years. If we can get both of them on site, that would be even better. Then at least we'll have a backup plan for in case other things go wrong. You can never have too much life supports on station at any given time. So yeah, we did try to launch one of these earlier in the window because it was the mission critical hardware, but of course that HG3 engine failed on ejection burn, leaving it well shy of even escaping Earth orbit. And the pods themselves do not carry very much Delta V. It's really just enough to make docking and rendezvous. They are designed specifically for aero capture and aero braking passes before being able to make rendezvous with their target. So we will be taking this B upper stage with its HG3 engine. This is the BL variant for long term. It has radiators to help keep some of that liquid hydrogen cryogenic, liquid oxygen too, I suppose, although not to the same degree, and solar panels for keeping everything powered up, as well as expanded tanks for its RCS system for the RCS would be the proper way to say that, so that it can deal with its 5 relights on that HG3 upper stage. I did have to update this launcher. We did it on a live stream 2-3 weeks ago, into which I finally discovered that I had never updated the engine, nor really corrected the angle on the solar panels, which was the other thing that I forgot to do in the live stream. But we just made sure that our booster engines were upgraded to the RD172 variant, and that this HG3 was upgraded to the, I think it's the A2? Ooh, I really should have written that down. Good for me. Anyway, the one with 5 ignitions, but still only 1400 kilonewtons of thrust. There's another variant after that, the B, which is upgraded thrust and runtime at the cost of reliability. And seeing as how I had just had an engine failure, I wasn't really willing to sacrifice any more reliability at this point. Anyway, both vehicles are making their burn for Venus. VLSC-5 has actually made its intercept into Venus and is now just spinning around and getting some correction-y things figured out. We're not too far off from our path, although we are coming in on the wrong side of Venus. I will figure that out at some point, I promise, and we'll actually get it corrected. No spoilers. Although it did take a few times of replotting this node and just giving it a gentle tug. But based on its high cost of Delta V and the low power from our thrusters, it would actually entail another engine ignition to push that node a little closer in. Then I realized we're kind of coming in on the wrong side, so we'll go ahead and push that across. I hope that was that flight, or I'm just remembering everything very, very badly, one of these two was coming in on the wrong side, and then I had to go back and fix it. That much I can promise you. I don't remember which one it was. This is what happens when you record footage and then come back several days later to do the voiceover. Things tend to get foggy, and maybe it's just the Kerbal Inception thing going on here that is really screwing with my head. Either way, it doesn't matter. We'll cut to the chase of things, and that is that we have two fully topped off, well-fueled life support containers with about 1 kilometer per second left in their HG3 upper stage, ready to assist in orbital capture before letting the heat shield do the rest of the work, on their way to Venus, which is absolutely phenomenal. So we went from 0 successful Venus launches to 4 of 6 very successful Venus launches, which is absolutely phenomenal. Which, as long as we can get these two rendezvoused, or at least one of them, God, please, let's just get at least one of them rendezvoused to Oster Station. That means that the crew will be clear to depart for Venus at the very next Venus window coming up in about 2 years' time. Which is a landmark moment for the space program. I will say there are no other contingencies hinging on that. I would like to see a successful return of the crew currently at Mars, just to prove that the new Chestnut vehicle is up to the task. If it can come back from Mars, it can almost certainly make it back from Venus. But we will probably actually not be able to verify that function before it is time for this crew to leave, but I have every faith that our engineers have done their job and that we have built a very capable vehicle. And so sometime soon we'll get our first crew on station in orbit of Venus and start really raking in some very quality science up there. And that really opens the door for a lot more very interesting missions down the road. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate it, and I'll see all of you in the next one. Till then, see you later.